In the beginning there was neither form, nor name, nor measure. There was no direction, because space did not yet exist, and there was no expectation, because time had not yet been born. There was only darkness, not evil and not good, but deep, like bottomless silence. It did not press or frighten, because there was no one to be afraid. And in this darkness was God. He did not come into being, he was. Not as one object among others, but as being itself, in which neither thought, nor word, nor movement were yet distinguished. Everything that would later receive a name already dwelt within him, but dwelt undivided, like breath in the chest before the first inhale. And when the moment came, not the first, for there was not yet a first, God willed to reveal what was hidden. Over the abyss of waters, which were not yet waters but only the possibility of movement, the Spirit hovered. He did not cut through the darkness or disturb its stillness, but was present, as a thought is present before a word. And the waters, if they could feel, would have recognized in this motion a beginning. Thus creation began, not with a blow and not with a struggle, but with will. And God said. The word was not a sound, for there was no ear to hear it. It was not speech, for there was no language. It was an utterance of being, in which will and fulfillment were not divided. Let there be light. And there was light. It did not flare up or cleave the darkness like a sword. It simply appeared, like a truth that suddenly becomes evident. The light did not destroy the darkness, because the darkness was necessary, but it gave it a boundary. The darkness withdrew, knowing its place. And for the first time, distinction appeared. The light was called day, and the darkness night. And in this naming, time was born, because distinction began to repeat itself. Light replaced darkness, and darkness replaced light, and between them arose a rhythm, like breathing. So there was evening. And there was morning. And this was the first day. When light and darkness had found their turn, God turned his gaze to the waters. They were everywhere, not as rivers or seas, but as a single, formless deep. There was neither rest nor movement in them, because there was no direction. And God said, Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. And the waters were divided. Some withdrew upward, others downward, and between them space came into being. It had no color and no form, but height appeared within it. Thus the sky was born, not as a dome, but as the possibility of a gaze, as the distance between what is above and what is below. The sky became a boundary, but not a barrier. And there was evening. And there was morning. And this was the second day. Under the sky, the waters still covered everything that existed. Then God commanded them to gather. The waters withdrew, as if obeying an ancient call, and dry land rose from their depths. It was rough, silent, and empty, but weight and stability were already hidden within it. God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of the waters seas. And he saw that it was good. But the earth was still lifeless. Then God spoke, and his word touched its very depths. Let the earth bring forth greenery. And the earth responded. Shoots broke forth, at first timid, then bold. Grass covered the surface, after it came plants, and then trees bearing seed within themselves. Each according to its kind, each carrying the future inside. The earth ceased to be silent. And there was evening. And there was morning. And this was the third day. Light already existed, but it knew no measure. Then God set the luminaries in the firmament of the sky, that they might become signs of time. The sun was kindled to rule the day. The moon, to rule the night. And the stars were scattered across the sky like countless witnesses of order. From that day, light began to count the steps of time. And there was evening. And there was morning. And this was the fourth day. The waters were filled with movement. Creatures appeared within them, swift and slow, small and great. The depths of the sea received life, and the sky received winged inhabitants. And God blessed them, that life might not fail. And there was evening. And there was morning. And this was the fifth day. The earth again responded, bringing forth beasts and cattle, each according to its kind. But within this day something greater was hidden. And God said, Let us make men in our image. And in this word, for the first time, there sounded not merely creation, but the intention of relationship. Having said this, God did not create men at once. The world was already filled with life, but within it there was still no one who could become aware of the gift of being. The earth was generous, the sky was high, the waters were full of movement, but all of this existed without a witness. And then God turned to the earth differently than before. He did not command it to bring forth men, as he had commanded it to bring forth grass or beasts. He himself bent down to it. From the dust of the ground God formed men. The dust was dry and mute, but in the hands of the Creator it gained form. Slowly, with intention, flesh was shaped, not as a vessel for suffering, but as a dwelling place of life. And when the form was complete, the men still did not live. He lay motionless, like sleeping clay. Then God breathed into his face the breath of life. And the breath became a soul. The man opened his eyes. In that moment the world was seen for the first time. The men breathed in, and air became air. He touched the earth, and the earth became earth. Light fell upon his face, and day acquired meaning. Everything that had existed before now received its reflection in living consciousness. And the man became a living soul. God called him by the name Adam, because he was taken from the ground. And God planted a garden in the east, in Eden. It was not merely a garden, but a place of order in the midst of a world that was only learning to be. The earth there was gentle, the water was pure, and the light was mild. In Eden there was no wildness and no toil, because everything existed in harmony. From the ground grew trees, pleasant to the sight and good for food. Their fruit knew no decay, and their leaves did not wither. In the midst of the garden stood two trees. One, the tree of life. The other, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. A river flowed out of Eden to water the garden, and from there it divided into 4 streams. Its waters were calm, yet full of strength, like a beginning that does not yet know its end. And God placed the man in the Garden of Eden. Not as a slave and not as a guest, but as a keeper. And God said to Adam, "From every tree in the garden you may eat." In these words there was generosity. "But from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat from it." In these words there was a boundary. "For in the day that you eat from it, you shall surely die." Adam listened, but he did not yet know what death was. The word settled in his mind like a seed that would sprout only in time. The commandment was not a threat, it was a condition of freedom. And God said, "It is not good for the men to be alone." This was the first thing that was called not good. The world was perfect, but the man was alone. God brought to Adam all the animals he had created. Adam looked at them and gave them names. In every name there was recognition, he saw their nature and distinguished one from another. But among them there was not found a helper corresponding to him. And then God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam. While Adam slept, God took one of his ribs and closed up the place with flesh. And from the rib he made a woman. She was not taken from the ground like Adam, and she was not created apart from him. She was from him, but not him. When Adam awoke and saw her, he recognized her. "Behold, this is bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh." There was joy in his voice, because loneliness had been undone. "She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of men." And they were both naked, Adam and his wife. And they were not ashamed, for they did not yet know division. And by the 7th day God completed his works. And he rested. Not because he was weary, but because everything was finished. Rest became the crown of creation, not emptiness, but fullness. And God blessed the 7th day. And he sanctified it. And the world entered into a silence in which everything was in its proper place. Thus the beginning was completed. But the story was only preparing to begin. Rest was not muteness. It was depth, in which all that had been created was in harmony with itself. In this rest there was no expectation of change, because nothing had yet been lost. Adam lived in Eden without counting days. Morning did not differ from evening by weariness, and night carried no fear. He walked through the garden, touched the bark of trees, bent to the waters of rivers, and saw the sky reflected there, and all of this was one whole. Animals approached him without fear. He knew their names and knew their paths. Between them there was no domination and no submission, only recognition. His wife was beside him. They did not speak of themselves as two, because they did not yet know division. Their presence to one another was as natural as light to the eyes. The gaze concealed nothing, the touch required no justification. And God dwelt with them. Not as a distant ruler, but as one whose presence needed no proof. When he passed through the garden, the air grew quieter and the heart clearer. Adam did not know the words image and likeness, but he lived them. He could see, and understood that he saw. He could choose, and knew that choice carried weight. He could keep, and therefore did not destroy. There was no desire in him to possess, because everything was already a gift. He did not seek to change the world, because the world was complete. His labor was not struggle, but the continuation of order. And in this he was the image of the Creator, not by power, but by the capacity to love and to keep. At times Adam stopped near the tree of knowledge. Outwardly it did not differ from the others. Its fruit was just as beautiful, its leaves just as alive. But around it there was something different, not prohibition, but another kind of silence, more attentive. Adam remembered the word of God, though he did not yet fully understand it. He knew that this tree was a boundary, and he did not seek to cross it. The boundary did not weigh upon him. For freedom had not yet been tested by doubt. The rivers flowed, each carrying its own course. Gold in the earth did not entice, stones did not demand to be taken. Everything had its place and did not seek to go beyond it. In this world there was no history, only a present stretched into eternity. But where there is choice, another possibility can exist. And the shadow of the future was not yet visible, but it could already appear. Sometimes, when evening descended upon the garden and the light grew gentle, Adam sensed within himself a question for which he had no name. It was not anxiety and not desire. It was only the feeling that a gift could not only be received, but also lost. He did not share this with his wife, because he did not know how to speak of what did not yet exist. The garden remained quiet. The tree stood in its place. And history had not yet begun. But its possibility was already breathing nearby. God saw the man not as the man saw himself. Adam did not yet know loneliness as pain, but God already knew it as the absence of fullness. The world was complete, and yet at the very center of creation there remained a silence not filled with an answer. It is not good for the men to be alone, God said. These words were not a reproach and not a sentence. They were a revelation about the nature of men. He was created for encounter. God again brought living beings to Adam. They came close, breathed beside him, looked into his face. Adam named them, and in each name their essence was affirmed. But every name returned to him empty, none responded within him as an equal. He was among life, but not shared. And then God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the men. It was not merely the sleep of the body, but a descent beyond consciousness, to where a person cannot act on his own. Adam did not participate in this creation, and therefore could not appropriate it to himself. While he slept, God took from him a part, not the head, that it might rule, and not the foot, that it might be trampled, but the rib that guards the heart. From this rib God created the woman. There was no different nature in her, but there was a different orientation. She was created not from dust, but from the living, so that recognition would arise between them at once. When Adam awoke, he saw her. And for the first time, a word was born not as a name, but as a confession. Behold, this is bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh. In these words there was no power, only the joy of meeting. He did not name her as he had named the animals. He acknowledged her. She shall be called woman, he said, for she was taken out of men. Thus there appeared not subordination, but union. And therefore it is said, a man shall leave his father and his mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. They stood beside one another, different and equal, turned toward each other. There was no fear between them, because there was nothing hidden. And they were naked. And they were not ashamed. For love had not yet known loss, and the world had not known fracture. The woman stood in the garden, and the world for the first time looked at itself through her eyes. In her gaze there was no fear, only attentiveness. She did not know what it meant to be alone, and therefore did not seek protection. The garden received her as naturally as it had once received Adam. Adam looked at her and recognized himself in her, but otherwise. If in him the world was firm and straight, in her it was turned, like a reflection in water. Deeper, quieter, more attentive to the movement of the heart. They learned to be together not through words, but through presence. Their silence was conversation, their steps agreement. In the evenings they sat by the waters, and the departing light left no emptiness within them. Among all the creatures of the garden there was one in whom the movement of thought preceded the movement of the body. The serpent. He was not darkness and not chaos. He was a question. There was no brute force in him, but there was sharpness, the ability to touch a boundary without breaking it at once. He watched. He saw how the man passed by the tree of knowledge without stopping. He saw how the woman looked at the fruit without touching it. And in this he recognized not prohibition, but possibility. The serpent approached the woman. Did God really say? He asked. The question was not a challenge. It was an invitation to think. You shall not eat from any tree in the garden. The woman answered calmly. We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. But of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, God said, you shall not eat of it, and you shall not touch it, lest you die. The serpent did not hurry. You will not surely die, he said quietly. For God knows that in the day you eat of it your eyes will be opened, and you will be like gods, knowing good and evil. His words were not wholly false. There was a mixture of truth in them, and therefore they were dangerous. The woman looked at the tree differently. She saw that the fruit was good for food. She saw that it was pleasing to the eyes. And for the first time in her was born the desire not to receive, but to take. Knowledge seemed to her a path, not a limit. She reached out her hand. The world did not stop. The fruit was taken. She ate. And she gave to her husband. Adam accepted the fruit not out of thirst for knowledge, but out of closeness. He did not want to be apart from what she had chosen. And he ate. And the eyes of them both were opened. But they saw not what they had expected. They saw themselves, separated. Nakedness, once natural, became vulnerability. The gaze grew heavier than touch. Distance arose between them. They sewed coverings for themselves from leaves. This was the first human creation, and its first motive was fear. And they heard the voice of God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And they hid. This was new. Before there had been no need to hide. Adam, where are you? The voice sounded. It was not a question of place, but of condition. I heard your voice and I was afraid, because I was naked, the men answered. Who told you that you were naked? Silence became accusation. Adam looked at the woman. The woman whom you gave me, she gave me the fruit. The woman looked at the serpent. The serpent deceived me. Thus guilt was for the first time passed on, not taken upon oneself. The serpent was stripped of its height. The woman was given the pain of birth, not as punishment, but as a reminder of the fracture. The man was given the heaviness of labor, the earth would no longer answer without resistance. But even in judgment a promise was left. The seed of the woman would crush the serpent's head. God made garments of skin for the man and his wife. This was an act of mercy, before exile. And he sent them out of the garden. Not because he ceased to love, but because the way back through the tree of life became impossible. A cherub and a flaming sword stood at the entrance. Adam and Eve went out. The earth received them differently than the garden had. And the history of humanity began, outside Eden. But the memory of it remained within them, like a longing for a lost wholeness.